But we also want to make sure that we can help you with the tools in seeking them out on your own as well. So not only will we look to A, educate on these opportunities, B, help connect you to these opportunities, but we also want to help you secure and actually win these grants. So my office and I myself am very excited to help issue letters of support for major grant proposals in our community that are fully fleshed out and have that we are just very excited about in making sure that we get these dollars to our districts and frankly to you all. There are tons of wonderful federal programs, but we also know that so many of the people that are best suited in knowing how to deploy these resources are just the everyday grassroots leaders in our communities. So we want to make sure that we can also issue letters of support. We have education, we have connection, and we have letters of support that we'd also wish to issue on behalf of your grant proposals to ensure that we can get the attention of our relevant departments. Very often we find that the difference between someone just applying for a grant on their own, although plenty of people absolutely do win federal grants on their own, but having a letter of support from your member of Congress can very often dramatically increase the odds that your grant may be accepted by a local department. We have successfully been able to do this in certain very major grant proposals. Most recently, we had a massive $110 million grant that we were able to bring home right here to the Bronx for the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center. As many of you all know, one of the largest food distribution areas in the world is right here in our district, in our new district going into 2023 in Hunts Point. But we had dramatic infrastructure needs, environmental justice needs in our community, and we were able to secure a $110 million grant that was then matched by city and state resources for a total, I believe, of over $300 million. So that is a huge, massive infrastructure investment example, but there are also plenty of grants that are on the completely other end of the spectrum, where if you are an organization that is a couple of years in, that's done really solid work, but you don't need to build an entirely new climate charging infrastructure for our trucks. But your grant support is in the thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, et cetera. That's still a pretty big grant as well, but we're also happy to help anything from, looking for just a few bucks to a lot of money as well. So I'm so deeply grateful for everyone. Thank you so much to Daniel. Thank you to Noreen. Thank you to Judy Ceresa, who you will also be hearing from. She is representing us from Grants.Gov, and she will also be our federal representative to help you all get more information on the federal grants application process. So I'm very, very excited to hand it off to you all. And again, since this is our very first grants webinar, feel free to give us any feedback at the end in ways that you think that if there are any additional things that you'd like to see included for next time or for other people to benefit from, just feel free to give us some feedback, because every single bit really, really helps. So thank you all so much. Although I'm heading back to DC, when we get back to New York, we'll see a lot of you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. As the Congresswoman mentioned, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end. So if you do come up with any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A feature on Zoom. We'll get to as many of them as we can at the end of the program. Quick rundown of the agenda for today. We'll go a little bit more in depth about federal grants and how our office can help your organization. I'll also discuss a few of New York 14's 2022 grant awardees thus far. And then we'll move into Judy Ceresa's Grants.Gov presentation, which will go really in the weeds about how to use Grants.Gov and make the most of it, and how to prepare yourself for when you do apply for a grant. And then after that, we'll move on to the Q&A. So I'd like to start by talking about what federal grants are. And a good way to do that is to start by talking about what they're not. So federal grants are not benefits or entitlements to individuals. Things like student loans and small business loans are not grants. A grant is one of many different forms of federal financial assistance. Grants are a way the government funds ideas and projects to provide public services, stimulate the economy, support critical recovery initiatives, innovative research, and many other programs. Grants are intended for projects serving broader needs at the local or state level. When it comes to eligibility, most federal grants are awarded to the state and local governments, which in turn make subawards to local entities such as eligible nonprofit organizations, like a lot of you are joining us from. Government funding may also be available directly to the nonprofit organizations for initiatives such as establishing food kitchens or after-school tutoring programs, and in some cases to for-profit institutions other than small businesses as well. Federal grants come in two different types. The first is a discretionary grant. Discretionary grants are a type of grant in which a federal agency selects the awardee or the grant recipient based on merit and eligibility. For discretionary grants, the federal awarding agencies review, assess, and evaluate the quality of the grant application to inform their funding decisions. It's a competitive process, and not everybody who applies is selected. And in these cases, your organization would be applying directly to the federal agency. Mandatory grants are a type of grant that are awarded to every eligible applicant, generally a government entity, based on the conditions defined in the authorizing statute. So grant seekers may be more familiar with the terms block grant or formula grant. In these cases, nonprofits or other non-government entities may eventually receive this grant via pass-through funding. Depending on the grant program, the state or local government may use the mandatory grant funding to issue subawards to local entities to accomplish the purpose of the grant. The Congresswoman covered a few of these bullet points about how our office can help. As she mentioned, we can flag grants that are appropriate for your organization. We'll be building out this grants program over the coming months, which will include a grants guide and a grants-focused newsletter in the coming months. She also mentioned we can help you determine your eligibility in coordination with the awarding federal agency. We can also coordinate with state and city agencies for advice on subawards for grants where only governments are eligible. Those are the mandatory grants that I mentioned before. In those cases, you'll be dealing with the state or the city agencies, but we can help with that coordination and communication as well. We can absolutely write letters of support for grant applications. We can facilitate communication throughout the grants process wherever help is needed, and then we can track grant applications after submission. I also wanted to make a note to discuss community project funding briefly. Some of you on this call have some experience with our community project funding. As of fiscal year 2022, the House and the Senate implemented community project funding. Through this process, our office can submit up to 15 projects each year that we would like to see funded in our district. There are strict guidelines limiting the types of projects and organizations that are eligible. This process is separate from the federal grants process, but funding may be available for your organization through CPFs as well. More information on our CPF process can be found on our website, and the details change year to year. So we'll be sure to update the website with next year's eligibility and application process in the first quarter of next year as soon as the guidelines are released, assuming that the CPF process is implemented again next year. I also wanted to take a moment to celebrate some of the organizations that have been awarded in New York 14 already this year. We see awards go to a wide breadth of agencies or organizations throughout our district. So I've listed some of the organizations that have gotten awards already in 2022. First of all, we see a number of organizations that get research and development grants from the Health and Human Services Agency, the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, New York State Health and Hospitals, and the Archdiocese Drug Abuse Prevention Program, to name a few. The National Endowment of the Arts offers literature fellowships and local arts agencies support. So the Bronx Council on the Arts, Queens Museum, and other local theaters have won some of those awards this year already. In addition, the National Endowment for the Humanities offers humanities grants. SUNY Maritime and the New York Botanical Garden have won a couple of those awards this year. The Congresswoman also mentioned the Department of Transportation. Pelham Bay Bridge Replacement Project was a recent awardee in our district. And then we also saw FEMA and DHS grants this year, emergency grants for Hurricane Ida and COVID, going to Billie Jean King Tennis Center and Herbert H. Lehman Public High School in our district. We look forward to seeing more grant awardees from our district this year, and hopefully some for your organization in the coming years. Now I'd like to pass it off to Judy Ceresa. Judy is a senior program advisor in the Grants.Gov Program Management Office, where she has worked for the past several years, primarily providing support to both applicants and grantors that use Grants.Gov. Before that, Judy spent 17 years working in various offices throughout at Health Resources and Service Administration, including the Office of Grants Policy. Her background is in program management as well as information technology management. So Judy, I'd like to pass it off to you.
So thank you very much, Daniel, for that introduction. I really appreciate that very much. And I'm delighted to be here. We have a really good group of attendees, which I'm so happy to see. So Grants.Gov is managed by the Department of Health and Human Services, because Health and Human Services basically awards most of the grants. But we do support the system in our program management office for several of the federal grant making agencies that make grants that you have access to searching for on Grants.Gov. So what I'll start with is I'll talk about how you would navigate Grants.Gov if you're new to Grants.Gov. Some of you may not be, some of you may have already used Grants.Gov in the past. So this will be sort of a refresher, but other than that, I think we lost the slides. Daniel?
Apologies, Judy, give me just one moment.
Oh, sure.
We're back. Can you see them, Judy?
Yeah, I am trying to get back. I don't know what happened here. Hold on. Can you see them? That's the most important thing.
Yes.
I am challenging. I'm challenged with that, but that's okay. Anyway, let me see something. Oh, yeah, here we go. I'm back. Yay, thank you. Okay, how to search for grants. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the registration process, and that is very important in submitting a federal grant or receiving an award, federal grant award. So what's actually in a funding opportunity, we'll take a look at that. We'll talk about Workspace and how one would go about applying through Workspace. If you're coming through the user interface itself to submit grants, how to track and the importance of tracking your application to see it through its submission process. And at the very end, I'll provide tips and resources where you can go for more information about federal grants, and also provide a toll-free help desk, Grants.Gov applicant help desk phone number, as well as email account. So let's move forward and start with navigating Grants.Gov. So if you click on the home page, you're going to see a view similar to this. And there's a couple of areas that you're probably going to click on right away. You're going to click on most likely the search grants or the applicants grants tab that are highlighted at the top. Like I said, we have a lot of resources on our website. We have YouTube videos that we created that provide a 2 to 3 minute snippet of information on primarily everything that an applicant would ever need to know to use all of the applicant functions on the website. We also have an online user guide that you can also use as a tool, and other training content on our site. Several years ago, we set up a space on our site called Learn Grants, and it's basically a place where you can go to learn about the federal grants life cycle and the various phases within that life cycle, how to get a better understanding of how grant policies are created, and the definitions for various grant terminology and such. We also have a way for you to sign up to receive email notifications for particular funding opportunities that you may be interested in. You can select an agency, a specific agency or agencies that you would be interested in being notified about when funding opportunities are posted. And there's also a way that we can provide you with updates on the specific grant funding opportunities that agencies that sometimes will modify. So if, say, an agency goes in and they modify, or they extend the deadline date for an opportunity, you can get an email directly to you telling you of that modification. So the registration process is primarily 3 separate steps, but they're very different steps. So first of all, if you're an organization and you don't, or just creating a new organization and you don't already have one, you're going to need to go to the sam.gov website. That is short for the System for Award Management.gov website. And that is managed by the General Services Administration. Here is where you would go to create a sam.gov account. And once you've created that account, you will get what we call a Universal Entity Identifier, or UEI, which was formerly known as a DUNS number, for those of you who have some familiarity with grants. Once you receive your DUNS number, your account becomes active. You will get, establish who your, what we call electronic business point of contact, or eBiz POC account. Now, if you're the eBiz POC for your organization, you will have the responsibility of overseeing all the activities for your organization within Grants.gov, including approving various roles for folks in your organization. I have to stress this because this is super important. It takes a while to get an active sam.gov account, and as of late, they've had some backup, some of a backup in their requests because of a transition that they did from the DUNS to the UEI number. Anyway, I say all this because you want to give yourself plenty of time to get a complete active sam.gov account. You want to give yourself, unlike what this slide indicates, approximately 7 to 10 business days. I would say you want to give yourself 20 business days. You want to give yourself a good month to complete that process. It may take less time, or it could possibly take longer. So if you haven't already done so, I can encourage more strongly than by saying to you, please register now, begin your registration process now. It's crucial. Also to note, your account must be renewed on an annual basis, your sam.gov account. So you, as the eBiz point of contact in SAM, would need to go in on an annual basis and renew that account. So once your sam.gov account becomes active, all your data is electronically transferred from sam.gov to grants.gov. And this is how grants.gov identifies you as an organization. It's primarily by your UEI number. So once grants.gov gets this data on your account, it is that at that moment or that time when the EBIS POC can go in and assign you as part of the organization that will be preparing and submitting the application, the various roles that you'll need in order to prepare your application, submit it, and see it through the various validation steps to make sure that at the very end of all of this, the agency for which you are applying for funding, the federal agency, will go into Grants.gov and retrieve your application. So it's sort of SAM.gov sort of verifies that you are an official legitimate organization. So that is a process that you have to complete before you submit an application, and definitely before you receive a grant award. I know that these, what I'm talking about can be extremely tedious, and it's a lot of detail and process, but it's really important that you become familiar with the process. So I say this is sort of like the third step, but not really, because you could create a Grants.gov account at any time. And by doing that, it allows you, even if you haven't been affiliated with an organization yet and provided roles, while you wait for the SAM.gov account to become active, you can do various things. You can sign up for our newsletter and our blog. You can receive notifications of potential system outages. You can save searches so that you don't have to keep creating them over and over again. So there's lots of things that you can do if you log in with just a basic Grants.gov account until you can be affiliated with your organization. So there are primarily three key roles that you're going to sort of want to be familiar with if you're going to be the one in there submitting the application, or if you're going to be the one that's registering at SAM and overseeing everybody in Grants.gov within your organization. So we talked about EBIS POC. That's done in SAM.gov. Then we get all that information, your EBIS POC email, your UEI number, the name of your organization, transmitted into Grants.gov. Once that happens, EBIS can go in and select anybody who has a Grants.gov account. They can select you or pull you into affiliate you with the organization. So that's what the AOR role is for. It stands for the Authorized Organization Representative. AORs are the ones that can submit applications. They can create workspaces, which is another role that you can be assigned by EBIS POC. I'll go more into detail about Workspace as I move forward, but these are the two key roles that applicants will have. They'll have an AOR role and a Workspace manager role. So how do you search for grants? There's lots and lots and lots of grants posted on Grants.gov. It is mandatory that any federal grant-making agency post their grant funding announcements on Grants.gov. These are discretionary grants for the most part. That's what you'll find on Grants.gov. And Daniel did a good job describing the difference between discretionary grants and mandatory grants. It's very rare that you'll find a mandatory grant on Grants.gov. So when you go to our search page, if you click on the tab, excuse me, that says search grants, you can start your search by entering a keyword or a set of keywords, because you have no idea, say, what you're looking for. So you put in infrastructure, for instance, or you can enter a funding opportunity number, which is actually created by the agency. A lot of times you're not going to know what that is, but if you happen to know, you can certainly enter it in the opportunity number field. Or if you have a CFTA or assistance listing number, you can enter that. A lot of you probably won't know what that is either. But let's scroll down to where it says opportunity status. So there are basically 4 different statuses The first two are the default statuses, and they are the forecasted status or the posted status. The forecasted status basically says, hey, this is what we're going to be posting in the future. You can't apply for it yet, but this is our plan. This is what we plan to, this is the program we plan to post to make available for applicants to apply to, and other information that you'll find interesting so you can plan ahead. And the second defaulted status will be posted. And that basically means that if it says posted, it's currently open and the agency is accepting grant applications at that time. Now, if it says closed, it means that that opportunity has recently closed within the last 30 days. And if it says archived, that means those are federal grant opportunities that were posted several years ago and archived. And I say we've kept that option available for search because there are often, and I do it myself, there are often times when you may be looking for a grant opportunity for a particular topic that you can't find open currently. You can't find it by searching for using the agency or whatever it might be that you're searching for, but you could always select the status. You can select it all, but you can select just closed and archived as well and put in a keyword search, and that'll pull up or funding opportunity number or various other criteria, and that will pull up opportunities that you that may have been posted in the past, and it gives you information about what could be available in the future. It could give you a description of the program and also maybe some contact information, so you could reach out directly to the agency and say, I'm looking for funding to do this project or that project, and I see that you offered funding in the past. So if you scroll down into the, there's other ways that you can narrow your search. You can select different categories. You can select eligibility type, a funding agency. So if you want to look for all of, say, EPA grants or different Department of Transportation grants, you can select a search that will pull up all of those funding opportunities within that agency. So what's in a funding opportunity? So we talked a little bit about forecast. A forecast will provide an estimated post and due date, an estimated amount of total program funding, and an estimated award amount date. I'm sorry, that's the date that they plan to make awards. And then if you scroll down further within the synopsis or within the forecast, you'll see a description of the program, and you'll also see some contact information that you can use to find out more information. Then there's the synopsis, which means if there's a synopsis posted, that means that the opportunity is opened. It's going to provide you with the open date, close date, the estimated program funding amount, and the estimated number of awards that the agency plans to make. And if you scroll down a little bit further, it's going to give you a description, it's going to give you contact information, and where you can go for more information. But that opportunity is open and available. We have a tab that tells you the version history of opportunities. If they've been modified, you can always look there. Often there's nothing. Sometimes there is modifications that have been made. The Related Documents tab tells you, provides additional information. A lot of people call it or refer to it as a full announcement, full opportunity announcement by providing you with all the instructions that you need and some other supporting documentation that you might find helpful when you prepare your application. And lastly is the package. And here you can view the forms that will be required for you to fill out and submit, as well as instructions that the agency is providing in terms of what they're looking for in a grant application. So I talked a little bit about Workspace. So basically what Workspace is it's a place on our site where you can create a space to prepare your application and submit it. And so if you're going to submit a grant, you must create a workspace. That's where that workspace role comes into play, and where the AOR role comes into play. You're going to need those roles in order to create a workspace and to prepare your application for submission. It is a shared online environment where you can collaborate with your other teammates that are a part of your organization, but it also allows the workspace manager to add anybody who has a Grants.Gov email address or user ID into that workspace to help in the preparation and submission of grants. And a lot of times you'll have grant writers that will have access. They'll have profiles that allow them access to many different organizations, because they don't just write grants, help to write grants for one organization. It's usually several. So the workspace does give you a lot of flexibility in order to assist you in preparing your application. This is just basically a repeat of the roles that we talked about. So the eBiz assigns the roles and so forth. So if you look at the workspace manager is the one that adds participants. And at the top, you see a timeline where it says created. So at this point, the status of the workspace is only at the created stage. So they have to fill out the forms yet. They have to complete the opportunity, notify the AOR, and then the AOR will submit. There's two ways to fill out the forms. You can use web forms, or you can download a PDF form, work on it offline and upload it. It's probably not an issue where you all live, but there are areas within our country and outside of our country that have unreliable internet connections. And so we kept the PDF forms as a part of the workspace for those folks that are challenged with internet connection. Another good thing about Workspace is you can reuse forms from other workspaces that you've created, so that you don't have to add the same information over and over if it hasn't changed any. So it does help you save time. There's a lot of flexibility with Workspace. So this is just a screen capture of a web form where you see the red asterisk. That is a required field. So you have to fill that out. These are just features that Workspace offers. There's a date picker, and you can scroll down to add the type of application and so forth. So most standard forms that you'll be using to fill out a grant application require that you upload an attachment. That's another reason why you want to, I was going to explain the importance of having a Adobe software reader, because our forms are written in Adobe. So you want to make sure that you've downloaded a free Adobe Reader software, the latest version, so that you can add attachments. Most attachments, Grants.Gov will accept attachments in various formats such as Word or Excel, but PDF is often used, and that's another reason to be sure that you use Adobe Reader. You can keep going. This is all self-explanatory. So if you walk away from your system, you get up, you walk away from your laptop to go get a drink of water or whatever, your data will be saved. It's saved every 5 minutes, which is a good thing, so you don't have to start all over. We also, one of our tips is to tell folks that when you begin filling out the standard forms, you want to fill out the cover page first, because that pre-populates all the other forms as you move through the process. Saves you time as well. So this is a cover sheet for a PDF form. So we basically are providing screen captures of the different look and feel of the different forms. So now we're moving into the PDF forms. This is basically the cover sheet. So if you were to pull up the SF424 form, it's going to look just like the paper form used to look. This is the form, the type of form that you would download to your laptop, fill out, and upload. Wherever you see the yellow shading highlighted is considered a required field. You can also, what's good, you can search through your older workspaces, like I said earlier, reuse workspace forms. Many people do, and it saves a lot of time. And then when you're ready, the AOR will sign and submit the application. It's an electronic, once you hit the submit button, that serves as your electronic signature for the application submission. You can also reopen old workspaces or other workspaces and resubmit them if you choose. So we do keep that data for a couple of years. So it does help you, save time. It's really also important that you track the application submission. So use AOR. Once you click the submit button, you'll receive an online confirmation, and that's going to provide you with what we call the Grants.Gov tracking number. It's going to begin with the letter grant, and then there'll be a series of numbers. On that notification, you'll also see the official date and timestamp of your submission. The person that receives this information is obviously the person that submitted, and that is someone in the workspace with the AOR role. You'll also receive information through the form of an email. So you get your receipt email, which is the same information that appears on your screen. That's the first email you get with the Grants.Gov ID tracking number and official date and timestamp. Then the second one will be the validation or rejection email, which will you'll get just within minutes. All these emails come within minutes to the AOR. And one of the most important emails that you're going to get is, yes, your application was validated and it was successfully submitted, and the agency for which you are applying for funding has gone in and retrieved your application. So it's good to make sure that they do go in and retrieve the application. So this is just another way that you can track the application. You can do that through the workspace. You can also download via a PDF, full PDF, or a zip file of the application that the completed application that the agency is going to receive when they go into Grants.Gov and retrieve it. That way you know that they've gotten all the information that you meant to include in your application. And this is just another way, if you're logged in, you can track the status of the application. So a few years ago, we set up a mobile app, and that's actually allows you to search for grants, to add and edit, save search queries, receive notifications on submitted applications. You can actually submit an application on a mobile app. So tips and resources. Again, I can't stress this enough. Register in SAM.gov early. Renew the SAM.gov account on an annual basis and submit your application early. Please don't wait till the last day to submit your application. Agency discretionary funding, like Daniel said, is very competitive, and agencies do not often forgive people that have missed deadlines, and they don't often give you an exception to submit it after the deadline. Obviously, you want to read all the instructions provided by the agency. It's a good idea to fill out the standard forms first. Provide sufficient program and budget details. If you have any questions at all about the actual content of an application, you want to reach out to the agency itself. You want to limit your application file size and naming. You don't want to use special characters because that can cause your attachment These are for attachment files only. That can cause your attachment to fail. You want to use your correct UEI number and make sure that you use the Adobe Reader. It's a free version you can download on your laptop, and it's always good to use that if you're using for anything that you want to submit through Grants.Gov website. And lastly, we come to the how would you connect with Grants.Gov. So right now we have an applicant support center that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for federal holidays. You can reach the applicant help desk by emailing them at support@grants.gov. You can call them toll free at the 800 number. And if you happen to be out of the country, you can call the 1606 number. It's for international calls, and we'll take you right into the help desk. We do have a Twitter account. I talked a little bit about the YouTube videos. You can subscribe if you have an account to receive our community blog. We have a mobile app at your disposal, and with an account, you can also receive newsletters and system alerts and so forth. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. It's a lot of process, it's a lot of details. And I appreciate your patience with all the details.
Thank you so much, Judy, for all of that. It's really helpful to go into such detail with Grants.Gov, because from experience, it can be a bit daunting to get started there. And I just want to reiterate what Judy said multiple times: is you should, even if you're not quite ready to apply for a grant, or you haven't identified a grant that you are ready to apply for, I strongly recommend that you get oriented with Grants.Gov, get your profiles set up on SAM.gov and Grants.gov. That way, once you find the grant that you want to apply for, you're ready to go. One of the realities is that these grants are very competitive, but also sometimes the timeline between when it's announced and when the application deadline closes can be a matter of weeks. So if you don't have your profile set up and you need to wait to get it approved by SAM.gov and all of that, you might miss the opportunity for logistics reasons, not because of your application. So I'd like to move into the Q&A now. So please use the Q&A feature in Zoom. Include your name and the name of your organization in your question. And we'll start going through a couple of these questions. I did see that a couple of people asked if we could share the slideshow we made available. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to be working on a grants guide, which when we set that up, it will include all of the information that I presented and a good amount of the presentation that Judy presented, but we can also share the Grants.gov slides with folks. If you reach out to me after the webinar, I'd be happy to share that with you to get those step-by-step guides. Judy, I wanted to start with a question for you that's very specific. It's from Amy Shabar, and she says, how can I check if my organization already has a UEI?
So you can do two things. You can go to the SAM.gov website, or you can contact our applicant support desk. They can tell you whether or not we have your UEI and who has roles and who the EBIS is.
Next question is from Rachel Amy. Will you be sharing information about grant deadlines? For example, are most grants due at a specific time of year? So the first, I'm going to answer the second question first. Every agency is different, and every grant type is different as well. So we saw, for example, with the infrastructure legislation that was just passed, they set out a plan. That legislation mandated that several different agencies publish grants for the different programs, and each of those agencies then set out a plan, a schedule of when those grants would come out. And so eventually, after a legislation like that, a schedule of sorts will be set out, and we can, that's the communication that we can help with. If you believe that, your organization should be eligible for a grant for some legislation like that, we can figure out exactly the timeline. However, there are grants that are annual, that happen every year. And in certain cases, you can predict that this grant deadline is going to happen around this month every year. And so you can have that, that predictability in certain cases. But broadly speaking, there is no specific time of year when all grants are due. There do seem to be some times a year that are a little bit more busy and some that are a little more quiet, but it very much depends on the agency that you're applying to. And in terms of, Judy, did you want to add something to that?
No, I just wanted to add that a lot of times too, so, the opportunities can be delayed some if there's an issue with passing the budget. And our busy time is usually, just from my experience, our busy time is usually, it picks up the beginning, late January, but it gets really busy as you move into April, May, and June.
And then for the first part of your question, Rachel, what we would like to do is get an idea of the types of grants that you are looking out for. I have a notification every day where I see the new grants that are posted. So when I see something that's relevant to organizations in my district, I like to share those out. But the search feature and the subscription features on Grants.gov can also be really helpful. So you can sign up for to get an email notification when a new grant is posted to a specific agency or with specific keywords or things like that. So I recommend signing up for those subscriptions so that you see them as well. But it's the same way that I'm getting the information to share out those opportunities, which hopefully I'll include some of that in the newsletter that I hope to get started by the end of the year. Another question for you, Judy, is it possible to transfer or change AOR or Workspace Manager roles to a new user?
Absolutely. eBiz would do that.
Okay. I see a question here from Charlton D'Souza. For MTA federal grants to get new stations built in the 14th Congressional District, how do we apply to get the federal government to fund them? So what you're talking about, Charlton, is pressuring both your elected officials and the federal agencies to utilize the grant funds in the way that you would like to see them utilized. So there's no way for you to do that through the grants process specifically. You as an individual aren't going to be able to get funds for obviously get money from the MTA federal grants. That money is going to go to the MTA, and then the agency is going to decide how it gets spent. So the work that you're talking about is more of an advocacy thing, as advocacy work as a member of the community reaching out to your federal officials. In this case, the MTA is a state agency. So important to connect with your state officials to say, this is where we need this money to be spent. I think it's great that you are making yourself so aware of the federal grant money that's out there, because you can say, this grant is funding these specific projects. This project would be eligible. I think it should be spent this way. I can just give an example. When the infrastructure bill came out, some residents on City Island recognized that there was a specific element of the infrastructure bill about undergrounding electrical wires. They reached out to our office, and we've been tracking that grant and trying to coordinate with state officials and Con Ed to see if we can get them to apply for the City Island undergrounding through that grant work. So your advocacy and reaching out to the decision-making officials in these cases can be really helpful with determining, how the money is spent. But just to reiterate, there's no structured way for you to do that through the grants process. It's about advocacy to your elected officials. Let's see. Judy, I wonder if you can share any insight you have about Joseph Barbuto's question. Can you talk a little bit about professional grant writers and how people find them, and if there are resources that you know of to find grant writers?
I do know that there are grant grant writer associations, and that might be one way. I'm sure that there are some in your area. I don't know any specific grant writers, so to speak, but I do know that they're out there, and some are obviously better than others. You know, I think it's always a good way to get your feet wet in submitting an application. You can also partner with other organizations that also you'll learn a lot from them, from people that have already gone through the process, people that have submitted grant applications. You know, it's hard to say how, you know, I mean, I don't know if your office, you know, if, Daniel would have access to any of that, but I do know that there are associations because we have spoken at them. It's been a while, but yeah, just trying to think off the top of my head what they are. But
and I think, you know, we know that a lot of the attendees here today are from nonprofit organizations, small organizations that don't have a lot of money. And the reality is, you know, the Congresswoman touched on this at the beginning here, is that we want to try to help these organizations that don't always have the infrastructure to either find out about the grants opportunities or apply for them. And writing a good grant application is a part of that. And obviously, oftentimes professional grant writers cost money that organizations don't necessarily have the funds for. But familiarizing yourself with the process, submitting applications, and getting feedback for why you were rejected can also be helpful. Doesn't help you get the money immediately, but it could mean that a grant that comes up every year could give you feedback if you're in the position where you can't afford a grant writer or can't find one. In terms of the way our office can support the search, you know, we've been focusing on building out this grant program in the ways that our office is uniquely situated to support the grants process. I would hope that in the future we can try and compile some resources for finding grants writers, but I don't have that information right now. You know, I would, you know, searching for organizations that, you know, as Judy mentioned, there are grant writers that work, you know, they work for multiple different organizations and are familiar with the process. So it's something that I hope, more information I hope to have in the future, but unfortunately I don't have any you know, great places to point you at the moment. Judy, is there a search engine on Grants.gov to see former potential accounts of work submitted by your org in the past? This is from Teresa Lenz at QCC. I think I think what you know, as I mentioned, I've seen a couple questions here that make it seem like these are organizations that maybe their organization has gotten grant money in the past or done some work, but as we mentioned, it's a lot of work that these organizations don't always have resources for. And so I think specific to Teresa's question, is there a way to go back and find past work done on Grants.gov by your organization?
Well, it depends on how far back you go. You should be able, if you have a Grants.gov account, it should be, and you've submitted applications in the past, it should be, they should be accessible through your UEI number, DUNS or UEI. I know that all DUNS numbers at sam.gov received UEIs as far back as like 2001. So if you contacted our help desk and you provided your DUNS number, they might be able to find your account and then put you in touch with the current eBiz point of contact, unless that account for some reason was deleted. But we don't delete accounts unless we get a lot of background information from people that really do not want, you know, we have to confirm that they are who they say they are. We can't just go in and delete an account. So your information should be in there. I just one way to look for that would be to go through the help desk, because I do know that I don't believe that sam.gov is keeping DUNS numbers. we have them in our system. And if this is an account that you had before April of this year, then it was identified as by the use of a DUNS number.
Question from Willis Smith: are most of the grants for nonprofit entities or any opportunities for for-profit businesses? I would start by saying most grants are for government entities, so state or local governments, tribal governments, etc. And as we mentioned, those often are mandatory grants that then can be distributed at the state or city level down to nonprofit entities in some cases. There are some opportunities for for-profit businesses. They're usually very specific, and eligibility is very, very specific. It's not broad. It's not like small business loans. It's specific to the project that you're doing or things like that. But there is a wide range of grants for nonprofit entities. You know, the amount of funding and the type of funding varies depending on the type of work that your nonprofit is doing. We are about at time. I want to squeeze in one more question here from Epifania Adames. There are several people within my organization that apply for grants. Do we all have to use the same sam.gov account, or each individual has to have one?
No, each organization has a unique entity identifier. So you as an individual, there are, I don't know if I heard the question correctly, but can you repeat it?
There are several people within my organization that apply for grants. Do we all have to use the same sam.gov account, or does each individual have to have one?
No, sam.gov accounts are not for individuals, they're for organizations. There are some grants that are posted on Grants.gov for individuals, but the majority of them are for organizations. And that's why I talk about the organization registration. You don't have to have a UEI if you're submitting as an individual. But
Right.
there aren't as many on the site, so.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, just zipping to the end here. It took me to the middle of the screen of the slideshow. So thank you everybody for coming today. I want to thank the Congresswoman for her remarks at the beginning, and Judy for such a thorough and in-depth presentation. Thank you to all the attendees for your questions. I know we missed a couple of them. Feel free, I'll try to follow up with the ones that we missed and see if I can get some answers from Judy about those questions as well to pass on to you. But as the Congresswoman mentioned, we'd love to have any feedback. You can contact us at the phone number on the screen or on our website. Most of you should have heard about this webinar through the mailing that I sent out, or maybe you were forwarded that mailing from someone else that you know. I will be in the future creating a grants mailing list with a newsletter. And so at some point to that list, I will send out a sign up to that newsletter. And if you're interested in receiving regular information, we'd love to have you sign up to that newsletter. So more to come from this office in regards to grants, and just thank you everybody so much. And please reach out to us with any further questions.